Real pleasure to have Mark Brooks today. He's CEO of Courtland Brooks with a really interesting niche. He advises dating sites around the world. He's also CEO of, or he just acquired matchmaker.com. But the reason I'm interviewing him, less to do with dating sites, but because he is the ultimate digital nomad. In fact, he's doing this from his place in Dubai. He just moved there. And obviously we're seeing a dizzying pace of corporations move locations, people relocate during the pandemic and so on. So I'm going to ask him more about the whole digital nomad format. Mark, real pleasure to have you. Start off telling a little bit about yourself and then talk about Dubai. How did you end up in Dubai?
Likewise, Vinnie. Thanks for the interview opportunity. It's a favorite subject of mine. It's interesting, the term digital nomad. It's like there's another term, nomad capitalist, which I quite like. I almost think free worker is an interesting term as well, because ultimately we're moving into this period where people want to have freedom of location and time. And I can't let go of that. Many years ago,
you don't want to give your services for free though, Mark. So
yeah, I'll get to it. Yep, no worries. It builds into that. Many years ago, I went to Shanghai with my girlfriend, now my wife, and we thought, I wonder, there's a running Courtland Brooks back in, this was 2007, and it was an experiment. I figured we could go for a couple of weeks, but it's a long way away. Maybe we should go for a couple of months. So we went for 2 months and had a ball. And I was very apprehensive because I figured the clients aren't going to like it. I'm a long way from home. They're going to think I'm on holiday. You know what? They didn't care. In fact, we signed in Shanghai, and it turned out that they didn't care as long as the job got done. In some ways, I think it was attractive because we had a brighter social media stream and a brighter story. So I've been focused on the dating business since really 20 years. It's been I've been in the business. 15 years I've been running Courtland Brooks. So I took some formal roles and then got multiple job offers in 2005. So I took them all and started Courtland Brooks and never looked back. And then a couple of years after that, I realized I didn't need an office. I could be free. And actually, I ended up working better. I remember trudging through snow in upstate New York, in Poughkeepsie, where my one and only formal office was in 2005. And I thought Florida would be nice. And I just shuttered the office, jumped into a car, packed all my gear up and drove to Tampa, Florida, and really enjoyed the sun. And yes, it was a bit more tax efficient too, because Florida doesn't have state income tax. So
right, today, so.
Right. Which city?
Tampa. I'm in Tampa.
Oh, right, in Tampa, of course. My God, yes.
Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
So Mark, Shanghai. You mentioned Shanghai. I know you've been in Bali. You've been in. Tell us all the places you have lived and worked from.
So my entire schedule is a matter of public record. It's at jolvo.com. So I list all the places I've been, when I've been, JOL, like Jolly Voyages, basically, jolvo.com. And I hope it's an inspiration for people because it shows what's possible. I do slow travel. So we spend most of the year in Malta and Dubai. And I go to conferences and go meet people. I generally like to meet people at conferences because it's very time efficient, of course. But then I don't leave. I hang out. And that's the difference. I think it's very time efficient to go to a conference and then spend a bit more time there. I think the natural tendency is to jump over to a conference and then jump on the first plane back, which is, I hope that things will change, that people will spend a bit more time. There's a wonderful quote in I think it's Matrix 2, and it's by the Merovingian. And the Merovingian says, time, who has time? But if you never take time, then you never really had it to start with. That really resonates with me. We've got to take time. You can do business at the same time. You can have your family around you at the same time now. And that, in some ways, is the challenge of this lifestyle. I've got three girls now, but my wife loves to travel as well. I mean, she used to be a travel agent. And so we have this itch which we need to scratch. And but schools lock us in. And so I'm hoping there'll be a new wave of hybrid offerings that are truly effective, so people can free up even when they have families, and kids like to travel too.
Mark, I've seen on Facebook your photographs around the world. Your kids seem to love where you go too, so that helps, right? Your family relishes the travel, so you've got that gene.
They love Malta. They don't want to travel so much. We actually have to. It's not all roses. When we're in Dubai, they love it. When we travel to Bali, I mean, they love it. But ultimately, they do love the bedrock of their friends in Malta. So they've not got the travel bug, but they do appreciate some variation, as do we all. So it's definitely challenging, and there's always the question of another Airbnb. I mean, are they? It's hit or miss, isn't it? I mean, there's always some idiosyncrasy of the particular place you're going. So I think I think there's a way to travel that becomes very comfortable, and there are certain things you kind of get to know, like when you're looking at an Airbnb, for example, look at the comments, because people might rate something highly, but then they'll throw a clue, in the comment. Yes, I'm actually working on a side project called Savimar, and I spent a couple of years to get that domain. Actually, I managed to get it. It's an amalgamation of my daughter's names, and they're actually the experiment for this educational new learning mode. And so it stands for SA Sasha, VI Vicky, and MA Madeline, Savvy Ma, which is also clever mother. Kind of, that's the corollary. So the learning mode is, I mentioned that I'd hired some wonderful people in Bali, and they're actually what I call co-learning coaches. So the idea is, instead of this kind of relationship of student and teacher, we have a co-learning coach who is learning alongside my daughters. And so the idea is, the co-learning coach is better able to go out and find solutions and find answers. They're on the Time for Learning platform and Khan Academy, and they're learning alongside, but they're driving attention by asking questions every 1.5 to 2 minutes. And that really accelerates the learning environment. It intensifies it, and they seem to really enjoy it, actually. And that's always the problem, is like, when you're remote, I see my kids drifting off, they're gone. Without that kind of one-on-one engagement, I think this kind of remote learning is extremely flawed. So I've struggled with that, and we're trying to come up with a solution for it. We've driven attention and optimized for that. Now we're working on how to drive retention, and that's the secondary challenge. And then there's the social aspect, which I think can be solved by having multiple Savimar students get online and just do something fun during the day and throughout the week. So yeah, another side project, another challenge really, but hopefully we can help parents free up so they can travel a bit longer, and have some more flexibility, and give the kids the ability to live and grow up in multiple countries. Because I think in this new world we're moving into, it's not only important for us to have a fallback position and an alternative, but to have more deep cultural insight and connection. So yeah, that's another project.
What a neat idea to have the tutor learn along with you, right? So they can customize. That's a great idea. Good luck with that, Mark.
Thank you.
So Mark, you've obviously, as you move around, you must have a checklist that you go through and say, okay, very good bandwidth, obviously must be high on your list. Good stuff for your kids. Walk us through the checklist you go through. You must be pretty demanding in your process.
I think, generally speaking, perfection can be had in 3 homes: 2 that you're in permanently throughout the year, and 1 on rotation. And then you can bounce out to other homes. That's the model that I'm driving towards. I'm not quite there yet. Actually, I'm pretty much there with Dubai and Malta. And then, we've got a couple of months of timeshare, and we've got kayak, ultimately an Airbnb. So the world really is our oyster in this day and age. Of course, 2022, I'm thinking about. this year has been really, and last year has been very hampered, of course. But I think there's going to be a lot more people that are able to travel. And in terms of what I look for, in terms of the two permanent homes, is number one, safety. I'm not going to go anywhere where my family is at risk, period. So that eliminates a large swathe of countries. I won't tolerate even a considerable increase in risk for personal safety. So that's absolutely paramount. And that's why Dubai is very good, and Malta is very good too. Secondly, weather. Why am I going to go somewhere that is absolutely freezing with raining every day? I mean, extremes of weather are to be avoided, basically. Of course, we've got very hot weather during here in Dubai in the summer. So I'm generally going to avoid the summer months, a couple of months certainly, which is just sous vide human outside. So weather is paramount. I think also people, culture is third on the list. I look for friendly climate as well as a warm and wonderful climate. I'm looking for a climate of culture, of one people. I always do the crosswalk test. If I can't get across a crosswalk without feeling like I'm going to be mown down, that's the wrong place to be. Crosswalk test. If people are civil when you're crossing a crosswalk, then you're in the right place. And then efficiency. I'm talking tax efficiency as well. In terms of the permanent route, I look for somewhere that is going to require something of me, but not everything of me. Everybody should contribute, but then I would be a fool not to attempt to be tax efficient. So I'm really, I feel like I'm kind of a hypocrite when it comes to taxation. I would be a fool not to try and be tax efficient, but I would be just a bad person to not contribute. Everybody must contribute. You find ways to contribute, but you do it in a way that you have an element of control. And so that's what I've tried to optimize around. Now, those are four things, really.
You didn't even mention bandwidth. So that must be kind of a table stakes anymore, right? It's pretty consistent around the world.
You can get good internet in Bali. So, I mean, it's pretty much a given. At least you can get 20 megs, you're good. I'm sitting here with, it's funny because I'm going through the Emirates, I'm going for my Emirates ID and I'm running on Wi-Fi. I'm on mobile right now, but I'm still getting 5G. So I can pull down 300 megs on wireless, which is exceptional. But as long as you can get 20 megs. And I think nomadlist.com is good like that. You can just throughout countries that are still, anything under 20 megs, you has to be off the list, and that's kind of a given. It's a given. It's a showstopper, but it's a given.
So you mentioned last year and this year, pandemic and lockdowns kind of made travel much more difficult, right? On the other hand, amazingly, we're seeing a lot more corporation relocations, people leaving in the US from blue states coming to red states like Florida and so on. So if anything, mobility seems to be morphing and accelerating. What's your take on what's going on? And clearly some countries are saying, hey, come to us and we'll give you a passport. So tell us what you see.
In terms of my general philosophy about where to be, people often ask me, so how come you're living in multiple countries? And I say it's all the same planet. It really is all the same planet. We have lots of flexibility in mobility, and at least we will move into that world again very soon where we have lots of flexibility. I think you generally optimize around where you will be treated best in your various facets of life. You also try and contribute to places that you want to contribute to by your presence. And I think ultimately you vote these days with your presence. And this is the ultimate vote, especially, somewhere like Dubai. Dubai treats me well. I spend time here. Dubai treats me badly. I am I vote with my presence. And the same with location of incorporation. You vote with your presence. And so I think the other element of that strategy is these days, always have a fallback position, both in terms of personal and business. So it's important to have a footing in two countries, at least, both personally, and business-wise. I think anything less is risky, ultimately.
Wait, so I was talking to a big company that we both know last week, and I mentioned I was going to be talking to you, and I mentioned Bali, and they said, "Oh my God, we have a specific rule against people relocating to Bali." Do you think corporations are still a little bit backward when it comes to letting people work from anywhere? What do you see? Are you seeing some little more flexibility?
I think people and companies have preconceived notions of what is a good locale. Bali is a developing country. It is, I mean, the infrastructure is there in pockets. And I think you can find pockets of awesome anywhere. Bali is very picturesque, but the reality of when you go there is that it's developing. It's a great place to be to contribute your presence, because you know that the dollars you spend will circulate in that country and generally do a lot of good. So I like being in Bali on that point. The people are beautiful. The people are just lovely. I've hired 3 people onto my team from Bali, and they're just such a joy to work with. They need upskilling, but it's a wonderful investment to make. And I encourage other people to consider, there are so many pockets of awesome around the world, but they in many cases are pockets, and they need to be identified carefully. And I think Bali is one of those pockets that I happen to stumble onto. You know, I look at other places like Kuala Lumpur. I think Kuala Lumpur is terribly off the radar for people. It's a world-class modern city, on par with many American cities. I was very blown away by Kuala Lumpur. I was a bit disappointed in Thailand. So ultimately, you got to go. Make friends with the locals.
So Mark, we've spent all this time talking about travel and digital nomads and so on. My viewers would be very disappointed if I didn't let you talk about the dating scene. How has that changed during the pandemic? My God, you've obviously continued to facilitate it.
Oh, I love this industry. I can't think of another industry outside the medical industry that impacts the world more. I think we've got a great social responsibility. I think there's a lot of room for improvement for the industry as a whole. I think we're leaving a lot of money on the table because there's a lot of more value that we can unlock by doing more, by being trusted to do more, and by helping people in their relationships as well. So I see I'm very bullish about the dating industry, but it needs to morph into being a little bit more social and helping people as they get into their relationships. And there's I think there's been a media shift. We've moved to video more because we've had to. There's some interesting companies like Talkify, who are a client. Talkify do matchmaking, but they've morphed to doing, instead of setting people up on dates, they actually set them up on video dates now, which is interesting. They were always on video, and they gained efficiencies by not requiring people to go into their offices for the sales pitch. They do that part online, which made them a value, actually, a comparative value, without that conversion to people rocking up to an office. The rest of the dating industry have, by and large, shifted to video because they've had to. It's been a long time coming, and then all of a sudden, we've all had to. One standout company is the Meet Group. So the Meet Group do a very interesting mode of video, which I was, I wasn't sure about many years ago when I first heard about it. They do one-to-many video. Now I thought one-to-one video makes sense. It's a date. Do the first date online. It's safer that way. It makes complete sense. But they do one-to-many video, and I think I've tried to figure out why it's been so successful for them. They've gone from $0 to $200 million a year run rate for that particular element of their business in the last 2.5 years on the back of the economic imbalance that we all suffer from. Some people are ignored, and some people are inundated, depending on age, sex, location even. It's unfair as a marketplace in some ways. But with one-to-many video, that economic imbalance is redressed. The very energetic, charismatic person, ego-driven person can be in a video and talking to hundreds, even thousands of people. And those people then chat as that person is playing their guitar or talking about their day or generally being highly interesting. And then people will chat and discover each other in the threads. So it's just a whole different and quite fascinating. I think we'll see more media shifts. especially think the shift to augmented reality will be simultaneously incredibly creepy, but very, 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 very important shift to make. I think the phone's going to disappear, and in 10 years' time, we're not going to be holding phones. It's it's going to seem very antiquated.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of VC investment going into 3D presence and so on. Clearly the augmented reality, but new forms that we haven't even seen so far. So yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Mark, this is fantastic. And Dubai's been good to you so far?
It's been almost very good. Unfortunately, I put a vote on a very interesting new free zone. There's a free zone called KickLab, and my office, my effective office, was on the QE2, which was one of the fastest cruise liner in the world and one of the biggest for many years. And they retired it in Dubai. It's this massive, crazy boat. It's the Queen Elizabeth II. It's a QE2, I guess. And that's parked up in Dubai, and it's also a free zone. So I picked up an office there, and unfortunately, it's not in good shape. So my entire process got elongated. It should have been 3 weeks from company formation to ID, and it's been several weeks, and I'm now on the final cusp of it. But the KickLab is not in good shape. Hopefully they'll come back. But I think my advice to anybody who's thinking about it, incorporating here, is go to an established player. Look at the newbies. Maybe that's a second incorporation. But to get the job done quickly and effectively, you probably want to go with an agency of note. I've been happy with Fremont and VirtuZone, and then use an established free zone that's got some history of 5+ years, and then you won't go through the pain that I've been through the last few weeks.
You mentioned not having to trust through the snow and so on. You've got an ice skating rink in the middle of Dubai. How crazy is that, right? So there's a lot of interesting things. I call it the Vegas of the Middle East. Anything you can find there, you can find in Vegas, you can find there. Mark, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Vinnie.
Good luck in your endeavors, and hopefully Dubai will keep being nice to you.
Likewise, all good. Thank you so much. I'll speak to you again soon.